Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I am continuing my series of webinars that we have been doing for almost 3 years. And this one is number 295. So we're closing in on 300. By the way, this webinar is brought to you by the Hay Soaker. Are you tired of the drudgery and mess of soaking hay? The Hay Soaker makes soaking hay easy, convenient, and hassle-free. Go to thehaysoaker.com to learn more. That's thehaysoaker.com to learn more about how you can make your life easier with the Hay Soaker. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Shari. No, I'm calling you a doctor now. Are you a doctor?
Yes,
Honorary PhD. I feel like you should have a PhD. My guest is Shari Goodwin. She's a good friend. We've known each other for, I don't know how long now, Shari. Quite a while. But I'll let Shari do an introduction for herself because that's always better than what I will do. And take it away, Shari.
Well, thank you, Wendy. It's always an honor to be here with you, and I've been on a few times, so thank you so much for that. And my goodness, congratulations on the Hay Soaker. What a wonderful innovation. It's one of the things I love about you is you're so innovative and creative. So I'm a business strategist and leadership coach and a longtime horse lover. I'm an equine assisted learning specialist specializing in leadership and reinvention. Really, my main focus is on helping people achieve their big goals. So I work a lot with entrepreneurs, business leaders, all kinds of people. And my passion is horses. So I do it by way of the horse a lot of the time. And if it's not live with a horse, it's a virtual horse. So I've got metaphors, of which you'll hear in a minute, and all kinds of things, because I just feel that the horses can teach us so much. Well, they do teach us so much about life and work and business and facing fear and all kinds of different things. So I'm excited to share some things with you tonight about what I recently discovered.
Awesome. And you recently did a TEDx talk.
Yeah, speaking of fear, of facing your fears. Yeah, I did one. TEDx has always been kind of on the back of my mind. I didn't really see myself as a TEDx speaker because I just didn't. But there came an opportunity right here in our backyard. They had the very first one, TEDx Warrenton. So I had a little peer pressure of people saying, hey, you should do it, you should do it. I thought, I don't have an idea worth sharing. And they have a very rigid structure. And I don't know, even though I do speak professionally as part of my work, but there was something about the TEDx that just kind of freaked me out. I think it was a format, and I just didn't think it was for me.
It's
so
very structured, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
if you listen to all of them, there's a very, there's a tempo or a,
there is, and within that you can have a little bit of flexibility, but not a lot. So I'm kind of a speaker that speaks a lot in an authentic way, and I pull from a lot of different things. I love the energy of the audience. So a scripted kind, I've never scripted anything in my life, and this I thought I better script. So there were some process challenges for me, and I decided, well, after I got approved, you have to apply and everything. And so I went through that process, and I was like, now I'm in, now I have to deliver. So the thing about it, I decided to really challenge my own growth edge, even in that space. So I decided I would script, and I never script things, and I would memorize, and I tend not to memorize things. So I decided to that was a skill that can be learned, and there's huge value in it. I just never really learned it. So I thought, well, why not learn it now? So that put an extra amount of pressure on it to just really be able to recite something, but have it also come from my heart, be very heartfelt and authentic in the moment, and actually transcend the script. So it's just like patterning anything. If you're memorizing a dressage test, or you're memorizing your a freestyle or something of any sort, you have to memorize all of that and then get so good at it that when you do it, it just becomes art, right? So that's how you transcend. But in order to get to that place, you have to transcending all of that fear and the ego and everything else. It takes some work. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'll share some things, some ideas on that, because fear comes up pretty much at every point.
Okay. All right. So let's dive in.
All right. So first thing I need to do I have permission to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can make this work. All right, Mercury retrograde. Let's
Oh,
go
no,
here,
don't
man.
even go there. See?
I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna move you because I can't even see that. All right, so we're gonna go here. Go from the beginning. That's fine. All right, so you guys can see that, right? Can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. So there's the stage. So there's evidence. Yes, I did do the TED Talk, TEDx talk, and it is up there on YouTube. So if anybody's interested, you can go check that out. You can just look up Shari Goodwin TEDx, and it should pop up. We're just going to go ahead and move along here. So let's talk about this. So really what we're looking at here is saying, okay, so I want to do something. You know, what would you do if fear was not an issue? So we all have these little growth edges, and think about some of your goals. It may be, and really what we're going to talk about tonight transcends horses. You can use it with horses. You can use it with competing. You can use it for any big goal. I've used these strategies for writing a couple of books. All kinds of different things. So bear that in mind. So if you think about, you may even want to think about, you know, what's a big goal that you have. And if you want to drop that in the chat, if you feel like sharing that, would be fun to see. If you have a goal for 2023, or you have something you're working on and you want some little extra support on that, we might be able to address some questions here. But we want to be really clear about what is it that you want to do. And some people have a vague idea, but we want to get some clarity on that. And then the big thing is, why do you want to do it? Because your why is your driver. That's your motivator. And your why has to really be stronger than any fear you may face. So Wendy, I'm going to think back to, you and I have been together a long time, and I'm thinking back to when you first thought about Surefoot pads. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
All right. And so, you know, here's the what do you want? And you have some prototypes and you're working on that. And so for you, if you don't mind, would you mind answering the question, like, why did you want to do the Surefoot pads? Or
because the horses kept telling me that it was making a difference. So it was really the horses that were the drivers.
Yeah. Yeah. And so think back to that time, and here you are walking around with some pads. And did you have fear that came up? Did you have any, you know, what was kind of driving you? And the horses were telling you it's making a difference. Did you bump up against any of your own fears? And you don't have to be that self-revealing. But
not so much, because it was, that's the thing, is that for me, that was something really simple, because it was so clear that it made a difference to horses. And so literally the horses were the drivers. And so I didn't have fears about doing it, even though I got a lot of pushback from people. But I just kept saying, watch the horses. And the horses kept saying yes. And so, you know, of all the things I've done in my life, that one was really actually because it was so evident, right? Other things, maybe not so much. And so that I'm struggling with other things that, you know, that why question I probably need to answer a little more clearly.
Well, and it's interesting, and thank you for that, because you're such an accomplished woman. You've done so many interesting things in your life, and you continue to invent and continue to kind of press the learning into new space. And that's even with a hay soaker, right? So you've got this new product that's come out, and it's important for the why to be stronger than any resistance that you're going to feel in yourself or in others. And really, when you look at the top fears, I was doing a little research on this. Fear of failure is right up there. It's number one or one-ish, depending on the list that you look at. Fear of not being good enough is another one. Comparison anxiety, which is around, you know, oh, I'm afraid of what others might think. So this is about putting yourself out there. And I certainly know I've bumped up against that a few times. And again, it's always, the purpose is stronger than the fear that's there. So we always want to be looking, fear of public speaking, for crying out loud. When I was younger, I would never, ever, ever, ever think that I would be a public speaker. Oh my gosh, terror. So, you know, but it's a tool that I've found that's very useful in my work, and it's helpful. So the third question you want to ask is, you know, who do you need to be to make this happen, or to get that thing, to achieve that goal? Because who you are right now may not be the person who you need to be in order to achieve the goal. So there's a growth trajectory that we're going to talk about in a minute. Now, oftentimes what people will do is they'll take who they are right now and they'll say, oh, I could never do that. Like I just said with the public speaking when I was younger. Well, I couldn't do it right back then. I had to grow into it. So yourself is an expanded version as you move forward along your own growth, and you keep kind of pushing that. And then how do you get there? So we're going to talk about that tonight. Okay, let's see. We're going to talk about that tonight.
Yep. Down there in the corner.
The screen does not work. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the first thing we want to be aware of is this ladder of competence. And I don't know if you've seen this before, Wendy, but there's 4 stages here. So you go from unconscious incompetence, which is where you're just happy-go-lucky. You don't even know what you don't know, and you're just going through life like, woohoo, you know, and that's a really great place to be. It's very relaxing. And then there's the next place, which is the conscious incompetence, which is when you start realizing, ooh, you know, I may not be that good at this. This might actually be pretty hard. And you become aware of your perceived limitations at that stage. And a lot of times what can happen is people really get nervous at that stage and they're worried and they're not sure, and you get a lot of anxiety around this conscious incompetence. But if you know it's just part of the process, maybe that'll give you a little bit of relief. So as you start learning and growing, you start to become consciously competent. You're like, okay, I know how to do that, but I have to think about it as I do it. So there's this conscious awareness. So, you know, if you're, say, riding and you're going to go canter, and you're like, okay, I need to put my outside leg back or my inside leg here, or whatever it is that you're doing to get your canter, that's conscious competence. You know how to do it, but it's not just like canter, right? You just do it. So unconscious competence is where you know something so well that you don't even have to think about it. And this is this flow state. This is where we're all striving for. We're all aspiring to be in this place where you can speak as an expert, you can ride as an expert, you know, as that's your aspiration. You can be very fluent in your business or whatever it is that you're doing at work. You feel great. You can go to any meeting and just be a superstar and feel terrific. So this is the ladder of competence. And flow is actually it's really can be a manufactured state. There's been a lot of work on this. I'm just setting the background here for what we'll talk about in a minute about how, and some of these actual strategies to combat nerves, because nerves get in the way, but nerves are also important. Fear keeps you safe, right? So that's what it was designed for. Fear is designed to keep you safe. It also, you know, give you an alert, a caution. Hey, maybe you should pause before you touch the hot stove. Could be anything like that. So we want to be mindful of our fear. Fear doesn't mean you stop doing something. It just means you may press pause. You may learn from a fear. You may need some more skill, and it's information really. So to get in the flow zone, been a lot of work on this since, gosh, a long time actually, before 1998. But this chart came out in 1998, which is pretty handy. And what they're finding is that when you have a high challenge level and your skills are up to that challenge, you have an expertise or something, that's where you can start getting into that flow zone. But it can be a little bit stressful along the way. So if you look at the y-axis, the challenge level there, if you have a high challenge level and a low skill level, you're going to have a lot of anxiety. You're going to be up in that left corner with anxiety. And if your challenge is, say, a low challenge, but you have really high skill level, you'll be pretty chill about it. And that's great, but it doesn't stress you enough. We need a little bit of that fear, those adrenaline and different kinds of hormones to kind of cortisol to just help us focus so that we can get in this flow zone. So what I love, Mahaley is one of the primary researchers on being in flow. And he talks about, it's really about transcending the ego. He says, being completely involved in an activity for its own sake, the ego falls away. You don't think about yourself when you're in flow. And your whole being is involved and you're using your skills to the utmost. So if you think back, you know, when's a time when you were in flow? When's a time when you were in flow? When you're just in that place where you're using your entire being as a sensor this is one of the things I like to work with my clients, is always using your entire being as a sensor. Horses are doing that all the time. And you just get into this place and you're just feeling really fantastic. So think about that. So Wendy, what comes up for you when, you know, you're being in the flow zone? When are you in the flow zone? Would it be when you're writing or creating
There's
something?
a number, yeah, when I'm teaching, when I'm writing, if I'm giving a demo, demos in front of a big audience is always an interesting, you know, like I'm going to Pony Club, and it will definitely be flow, because there'll be a whole bunch of people, and you can see that they're in that apathy and boredom, so you have to do stuff to push them out of that and challenge them. So I make them get up and do crazy things.
Yeah, you're so good at that. And I mean, I'm obviously a big Wendy fan. I've been to most of your workshops. I just went to the one last year and up at Honeybrook, which was wonderful, like effortless rider course. And I've done unmounted, mounted with various of my own horses, and they're always different, you know. And you are always so present for every single one of those sessions, and that's part of it. So that's what we're always looking for. And there's all this neuroscience, you know, that supports these various emotional states that we're trying to get to. So I'm always looking for the high impact zone. You know, how do you get there with the least amount of effort? I mean, certainly a lot of this takes a lot of hard work, but how can you create that alchemy? What are the conditions in which you can get yourself to flow pretty quick? So right here on this little matrix, you can see you need a high level of challenge and a high level of expertise. And certainly it should be in an area of passion, interest, something like that. So the keys here are really success mindset and practice. So it's this blend of mindset and action, and making sure that you're doing both. So the success mindset, this is my definition. This is my horse Fresco, who I first met you with, Wendy, way back when, 2010 or 2009. I don't know. It was the early 2000s.
Earlier than that, I think. Yeah.
Because he's 25 this year. So
let's not go there. Okay. Let's not go there.
So the success mindset is really a way of thinking that empowers you and fosters this balanced, healthy state. It's resilient and flexible and adaptable. So if you have a challenge, it embraces a challenge and it sees things as opportunities, not necessarily as a threat. There's a certain degree of optimism and joy that comes through. You're pretty mindful, and most of all, it transcends the ego. And Fresco has all of these. I just love working with him. He's been my little soulmate for not so little. He's almost 17 hands, but he's a great guy. So I always put his picture up here because he's just one of the best beings at this that I know. And then practice is a success mindset in action. So here are a few thoughts on this. So the first thing that we do is we want to prepare. We want to set the stage for whatever it is that we're going to be doing. And preparation is super key. Actually, there's us down there, Wendy, in 2010 with Fresco at a lesson, which was super fun. So that's to model the hire the expert and the coach. That's you down there. But obviously in the background, we always have nutrition, exercise, and rest. So thinking about for you, you know, what is that for you? What's that special blend of nutrition and exercise and rest that allows you to be your best? And I know for me, you know, as soon as I start getting stressed, I start getting grumpy, whatever, I'm reaching for cookies because I love cookies and muffins and anything with carbs. And immediately, you know, it's just complete sabotage. So I have to be very mindful of myself to make sure that I set the stage, the proverbial stage for myself for success. And then setting up a location to practice. So whatever it is that you're doing, it could be at your desk, it could be out with your horse, it can be at a gym, it can be on the road, whatever it is, make sure that you are set up. So when I was working on the TEDx, I had several little stations all over the place to record my talks. Right here was one of them. Out in the barn was another one, walking in nature. Sometimes I do audio recordings, but you never want to have a reason that location would be a stopping or a blocker for you. Because boy, I'll tell you, so many excuses can start flying as far as, well, I'm not really set up right. Well, all you really need is a camera. You know, you need a great camera and be willing to just do selfies of yourself or whatever it is that you're doing, videotape yourself. And then certainly there's the more practical things like calendaring the practice times, milestone dates, getting any kind of equipment you need. So get yourself set up. So one of the things that I did for with my TEDx, because it was so different for me in the way that I was going to be practicing this, was I set up a review team. And I think I did this not as specifically for the books that I've written as well. So this gives you immediate feedback. And I carefully selected a hand-picked group of people that I trusted to give me feedback on the script, because I was writing the script, and it's a certain amount of time. We had 12 minutes really that we were given. And then there's a certain number of words per minute, depending on how fast you go or slow you go, that you rate yourself. Similar to any kind of horse thing that you do, because if you're running cross country, we have a certain speed pace we have to maintain. And certainly within, if you're riding dressage or anything else, you usually have a time window that you need to complete things in. So the review team was super helpful, and that you got to get your ego out of there too, because they're going to give you the hard truth, and it's important. And then hiring an expert or a coach. I hired a speaker coach. I always hire coaches. I have business coaches, all kinds of different people in my life all the time, horse people. And anytime I've hired book coaches for both books that I wrote, so that I can get that kind of objectivity and accountability and support going forward to ensure that I achieve the goal. And I'm pretty self-motivated, and I can do a lot on my own. So I don't feel that the coach is there to help me complete it necessarily, but I want their expertise and their guidance along the way. So that's super helpful. And then observing excellence, getting out and watching others who are doing really, really great things. That's one of my favorite things to do. I don't even care what the discipline is. It could be a poet delivering great poetry. It could be a musician. It could be a rider. It could be one of those crazy extreme skiers. I just love watching people at their best. That just so motivates me. So I watched a million TED Talks. And I went through the TED Masterclass, and I did all kinds of other stuff. I read all the books, and of course had my own speaker coach. So I was pretty committed. So now what we want to do is get into this calming place, because if you're a spaz and you're starting to freak out, you can't get any of this stuff done. You start self-sabotaging along the way. So this is my buddy Lemon Squeezy. Lemon Squeezy is an ex-racehorse. He's been featured on some of these webinars in the past with Wendy and Laura Plunkett, which have been super fun. And he is he's a kind of how would you call Lemon Squeezy? He gets a little hair trigger sometimes. He gets worried.
He's a thoroughbred.
He's a thoroughbred, and he's also very alert, very alert to any change in the environment, if you get my drift. So getting into this calm state is really important. He's super smart too. And when he's relaxed, he's absolutely amazing, but he can flip in a second. So we really need to manage the emotional state there. So the nice thing about calm is you can cue calm. You can cue calm in yourself. So even right now, you can just cue calm. And it could be inhale, exhale, it could be feet on the floor. You can use a visual. There's all kinds of things. I taught him to use this visual cue, and see my hand over the other hand there. And so he's just hanging out until I ask him to do something else. And there's so many different ways to do this. So we'll talk a little bit about it. One way to get into this calm state is what's called a resonant breath. And this was kind of new for me. This is Leah Lagos's Heart, Breath, Mind, which came out, I think, last year, relatively recent book. And she has all kinds of different ways to do breathing. And one of the things that she starts with, and I did all of these things for my TEDx. So, and it can work with your horse. It can prepare you to go out and work with your horse, or prepare you for work or any kind of goal, is you just sit and you breathe and you count as you breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out. So it's usually somewhere around 4 breaths, 4 counts in and 6 out, or 5 in and 7 out. Could be more than that, could be 6 and 6, could be anything like that. But what she's found is like I have a little Fitbit, old Fitbit here, is I would just look at I'd be breathing, sitting in the chair. So I'm not meditating, I'm just breathing. So this is really great for people who don't really want to meditate and have kind of an active mind, because you're following a count. So you're following a count, and then you're looking at your heart rate as you're doing it. And you can find, I'm just looking right now, so mine is a little high because I'm fired up. So I'm at 99. And but what you can do is you can take a nice breath and use a heart rate monitor for biofeedback, and you can start noticing it going down. And what you're doing is we're using all this neuroscience here, right? So there's neurobiology. You are in control of your breath. And most of the time when people get nervous, first thing to go is what? Respiration rate, heart rate, right? Those are the first two things that just start jumping up. And then we start getting into the amygdala instead of being into the cognitive center of our brain where we can really think, and we start becoming reactive and not proactive. So we want to be able to breathe in, breathe out, practice these things. She has, Leah Lago says, 20 minutes twice a day. I don't know, Wendy, have you heard of this book, Heart, Breath, Mind?
No.
Yeah, so Catherine Boykoff is a wonderful physical therapist, and I were talking about it. She actually referred it to me, and I started working through it. And it's really quite good. So once you get to a place where you find a resonant breath, which is, for me, it was ended up being, it was kind of like 6 and 8, 6 in and 8 out, maybe even 10 or 12 out, because the out breath ends up being a lot longer on the exhale, and the vagus nerve is stimulated there, and it starts to calm your entire system. And it's really great. So you guys can try that. Meditation is, of course, always wonderful. You can do a guided meditation. You can do just a silent meditation. You can do walking meditation. I kind of blend these things. So I'll do a walking meditation in nature, the nature walk. Sometimes I do a silent meditation. Even just 1 minute is very helpful. So if you're not a meditator, you can start anywhere you are, or you can even just do the resonant breath, and it totally works. Bless you.
Thank you.
So the next thing is, this was really interesting. This is kind of a new thing for me, Wendy. And you can see Lemon Squeezy is on his little Surefoot pads. So he loves his little Surefoot pads. Now, the indoor arena for him can be a little bit of a frightening place if he's in there by himself, or by himself with me. Sometimes that's like by himself. But what I wanted to try was to see if he would stay relaxed on his Surefoot pads while I did kind of a little Feldenkrais on myself. And what I've noticed, this is really fascinating, because I've started to use this with business coaching clients and executive leaders, is that right now, even in your chair, so I'm just even noticing myself, you're going to start to see your own patterns emerge. And so as you're sitting in the chair right now, wherever you're sitting, just notice where the back of the chair is, if there's a back. So like right now, I found myself, I'm ahead of the back of my chair. Part of that's because I'm leaning in, because I'm trying to talk to you guys. But it also can be a little bit of a habit. So I can get a little bit ahead instead of staying right over my center of gravity. So when you start to notice these patterns in yourself, and you can start to use a chair or a mat, you can actually sink back into the chair. So right now, if you want, you can sink back, and I'll do it too. Sink back into the back of my chair, and I just can notice that feeling of support. So when I notice that feeling of support, I also notice that my breathing opens, right? So what happens with a lot of the folks that I work with, they're super achievers, they're great people doing great work in the world. And this urge to always just get after it and do more and do more. And that's awesome, except sometimes we feel like we have to do it all on our own. And we forget that there's a whole support system that's available to us, starting with our own body. So when you sit back into your chair, or you lay on the floor on a mat like I am there with Lemon Squeezy, you can start feeling what's meeting the back of the chair or meeting the back of the mat, and what part of you is not. And Wendy, you'll learn this from you. I mean, this is what we do, right? In all of your workshops and things. And we're just noticing, we're not judging. But here's the cool thing is you can start to think about how much support is there? Are you able to accept? How much support are you accepting? And then you may think about, well, where else do I need support in my work? Where else do I need support in my business, if you have one? Where else do I need support in my life? And this really becomes a very important metaphor for becoming aware of where you may be trying to do everything yourself and the gaps that you can start to fill with the right kind of support. This making sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I just did this in a strategic planning retreat with some founders of a company. Just because I do these things extemporaneously, whatever's coming up. Of course, we have an agenda. We have a strategic planning agenda, always all this stuff. But there's certain things that come up that are really important. So I had them sit in their chair. Both of them were leaning forward. All of them were leaning forward. Going, there's all these things and the talk. We started to sink back into the chair. Everything started to open. Everyone started to get more relaxed. And then they could start to see what support was there and what support was missing. And we could really start to bring in and discuss what resources, specific resources, would be helpful to advance their goals. So lots of cool stuff coming up from the mat. And we're happy to take questions in the chat. I don't know, I can't totally see that right now. I don't know, Wendy, if you're following that, but if anything comes up,
there's nobody's been putting anything in.
Okay, cool. So if you do have a question, just go ahead and pop one in there. So that's a pretty powerful thing. So I laid like that with Lemon Squeezy for a while before he got bored and had to come over and check me out. But it's a pretty powerful exercise, laying on the mat and laying on the chair, and then thinking about the broader applications in your life and where you can open more. Another thing is we're always trying to use your entire being as a sensor. So we want to bring our body awareness into every part of our work here. And another great way to do this is by recalling a peak experience. So if you think back over your lifetime, a peak experience, maybe when you were in one of the times you were in flow, or just one of the best experiences of your life, you could think about it professionally or personally, and let your entire being go revisit that space. So when I say that, what comes up for you, Wendy? What would be one of your peak experiences?
Oh, I did a Vipassana meditation back in Australia back in '88.
Awesome. So when you put yourself back there just for a moment, just kind of relive that, what happens in your body?
What happens in my body? Some longing to get back there, but it's finding it not realistic in this world I'm in right now.
Yeah, right. So there's a little conflict in there. So if you just pretend that you're there right now, just pretend. We can the great thing is we can time travel in our minds. So just time travel in your mind for a minute and put yourself back there. What was your body experiencing back there? What was your felt experience?
I could walk down the street and pick up everything that was going on. I was too open, actually, in the end, but it was a very fascinating experience.
Yeah, super good. So what you can do from a peak experience like that, and thank you for sharing that, is think about who you were in that moment, the best of who you were in that moment. You know, I was open, or maybe a little too open in that moment, but I was open, I am free, all of these different things. You can create affirmations based on that. And so for example, one of mine was galloping cross country on my first horse, Dixie. And it was just she was an X-Race horse too. And she was a fun, vibrant girlie. Took us a while to get it together, but boy, I had so much trust in her, and she did in me as well. And I just remember galloping through the fields, and getting ready for the next fence. And it was just this sense of rhythm and power and trust and freedom. So affirmations from that for me are I am free, I am trusted, those two for sure. And you can bring them into the now. And when you relive that, your body begins to emit all kinds of hormones and different chemicals that give you that sense of dopamine and oxytocin and that sense of feeling really, really great. And it flushes out any toxins, any fears. So it's important to pull that in on a regular basis as you can, as you're preparing your mind and your body. Okay, so let's go to our boy here, Albert Einstein. All right, so he says, imagination is everything. It's the preview of life's coming attractions. So we can time travel both ways, always to think about creating the alchemy of our own experience. Right? Really, that's what we're setting up here, is we can own our own experience and we can design our own experience at any point, no matter what's going on in our world. It takes a little work sometimes, but we can. And he's talking about imagination. So using imagination and visualization are key for peak performance. So think about your best case, your best case scenario, and bring that into your heart. So for me with the TEDx, it was being able to stand on that stage in front of this beautiful audience, and many friends were there, which was wonderful. So see, I went back, and I have to go forward. So thinking about being able to just share what I love with people who are out there who hopefully will appreciate it and gain some value in it and not be worried about it, just speak about it. So that was important for me, and setting my intention there and the audience experience, being open and accepting and laughing in certain places and nodding and all that kind of stuff. So when you do that, you're implanting, you are actually leading your mind to be able to follow this script that you have designed of an experience. And it starts to use your reticular activating system in your mind. It starts to find that, and you find this place of flow. It's really, really incredible. I've used it many, many times throughout my life. Now, if that doesn't work for you, the other thing you can do is use imagination to think of an alter ego. And this guy, Todd Herman, wrote a book called The Alter Ego Effect, which is just fascinating. And it's really make-believe. You can just put on, make believe you're Superman or Wonder Woman or anything you want, and you can start to achieve great things. So he works primarily with athletes, and he's helped them achieve unbelievable performance just by pretending they were somebody else, somebody powerful, someone they looked up to. And so you can think about how powerful your mind is to be able to use it as an instrument to guide your physical performance. It's really pretty incredible. All right, a couple more here. So, and then there's the power of your heart. So there's been tons and tons of work, and Wendy, you and I have talked about the Heart Math for years. I know we've studied their work, Heart Math Institute. And Dr. Joe Dispenza is another one of my go-to resources. He has a whole bunch body of work on this kind of shift your mind and habits and things. So he says you can use the power of your heart. And when you open your heart center and practice feeling that emotion before the experience occurs, like I was just talking about, this imagination, and marry it with a clear intention, your body, your physical being actually responds as if it's in the future experience. And when you place yourself there over and over repeatedly, everything starts to line up. You start to be that. So he says change can only happen when thoughts are in alignment with the emotional state of the body. And this is why affirmations often don't work. Because if the emotional state of the body has not bought into the verbal, the affirmation, it's just going to cancel out. It's going to cancel out. So you need to be with it. Your why has to be super strong, and you have to be able to suspend disbelief to get yourself in this state so that your body can then perform at that level. So the mind goes there first, the body follows. And it's really incredible because your thoughts actually are so fast, so lightning fast. And the body is more dense vibrationally. So it takes a little longer. That's why it's harder to materialize things in the physical world versus in your imagination. All right. So here's a few things. Just want to offer you guys this, and I'm going to open this all for questions. So releasing negativity and pain, emotional pain, sometimes physical pain. I've used emotional freedom technique, which is tapping, and it's pretty incredible. So you can go look on YouTube, EFT tapping, and say you have, I used it even for shoulder pain. I had a torn rotator cuff a couple of years ago, and then it froze. It was just a big pain. So I used EFT in also physical therapy and a variety of modalities to help myself. But EFT was a real big one because who knew you have all of this emotional baggage that can get stuck in your body. And Louise Hay wrote a book called You Can Heal Your Life, where she actually breaks down all the different body parts into if they're hurting or in pain, you can actually isolate that and say an affirmation to help release it. So I do all kinds of crazy stuff. I'll do comedy. I don't care. However you get relief, right? So I have affirmations that I'll say for say pain in my shoulder, do the emotional freedom technique, which apparently shoulders, and you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. There's this kind of thing going on. You can actually have some of that. And it can be from childhood. It can be from previous generation or something else, trauma. And when you start tapping, it will start to move. The energy will move because what you're doing is you're tapping on acupressure points. And as we know from, for years, ancient mystical religions, ancient wisdom traditions, know so much about the movement of energy. And when you can get that moving and allow it to release, you can free yourself to actually be able to actualize more of your entire being. And certainly the heart math exercises are really, really great too. So if you're interested in that, just look under Heart Math Institute on Google and you'll find all kinds of ways to open your heart, because there's so many neurons. I think it's 100 million neurons in your heart. So you have a brain in your heart, you have a brain in your gut, and you have your brain in your head, and the vagus nerve runs between them. And the more that you can open these centers, the more access you have to your potential. And it's pretty incredible. And then finally, a basic question, I ask myself this on a regular basis, but if I start feeling locked up or I'm doubting or whatever, I'll say, well, what am I assuming about that? And I'm usually assuming something terrible. So what am I assuming? And how else can I think about this? That gets to your limiting beliefs. It starts to expose them and bring them out into the light. And then you can actually do something with it. Because if you're not aware, you can't care. But if you are, you can actually do something about it. And then just a couple more slides here. So now we get to the physical part. All right, so we got to get the brain. So we're working on all of these different mindset exercises, and you're clearing out, you're getting, feeling more comfortable and less nervous. So now it's time to actually really practice. And you can do all of this at the same time. So you can be practicing, and I integrate all of the mindful stuff, mindfulness work, mindset work too, into my practice sessions. So deliberate practice, this is something, a term that was coined by Erickson and Poole in their book, Peak, which is really great. We read a bunch of works on peak performance all the time. It's totally focusing on a task just outside your comfort zone, your skill level. So remember that matrix we had with the expertise and the skill level, with Mahaley. We want to make sure that we're not always practicing in the comfort zone. If you're just reviewing something, or you're just exercising just to exercise, but not to grow more muscle or more experience or skill, that's fine. But if you really want to improve, you need to be outside of your comfort zone and your stretch zone. And what happens then is your comfort zone, which is normally your balance place, gets bigger and it shifts. So you have more capacity. So that's what we want to always be looking on. So let's talk about what we do with that. All right, so when you practice, you want to build good habits of practicing. So working outside of the comfort zone, you want to get immediate feedback. This is how top performers are able to make such great progress and be really great at what they do. Not only are they practicing regularly outside their comfort zone, working with experts and others, but they're getting immediate feedback. So even if you don't work with an expert, and you can't invest in it, or you don't want to do that, you can get immediate feedback from your video camera, because the camera doesn't lie. Cold hard truth is right there, right in front of you. So that's a really great, and then you can make changes. So what we want to do is get that focus, do the work outside of your comfort zone, get the immediate feedback, and then fix it. So focus, feedback, fix it, right? And keep doing that. And then build in the rest, check your pace. So when you look at refining things, what I mean by that is going through your routine, your practice, whatever it may be that you're working towards, and refining it, making it better, making small tweaks, building in places where you can pause. So if you think about music, the rests are as important as the actual music itself. It's all part of, and we need to be able to give ourselves breaks and be careful about pacing ourselves. So if we get too quick, give a little half halt, right? And take ourselves back so we can rebalance. And then of course, there's the repetition. So we need to make sure that we have a lot of repetition, and it's physical and mental, and then the rest. So there's science is showing now that for intense focus, for periods of intense focus where you're very, very present, we can really only hold that focus for about 50 minutes to maybe 50 to 90 minutes. And then you need to take a break. So, and maybe even before that. So I know with my horses, typically I can't hold a focus for 50 minutes. It's too long, but I might be able to chunk it down and get a really good 5-minute focus and take a break, or even a 3-minute focus, take a break, something like that. And that's the power of the equivalent would be interval training in athletes or sports of any sort. But most importantly is this habit loop. This is really interesting. So James Clear wrote this book called Atomic Habits. It came out last year or the year before. It's just fantastic. And he built on the power of habit, which was Charles Duhigg before. So I'm always reading all these different books because I'm trying to figure out the best way to do things, what people are thinking about. So you want to cue yourself and make it an obvious cue. And it could be something, so you think about even just a super simple example would be brushing your teeth. So you wake up in the morning and you go in the bathroom and there is your toothbrush, or maybe you go do your business and then go have coffee, and then you go back in the bathroom and you see your toothbrush. So that's obvious, right? And then make it attractive, meaning, all right, so why would you create this craving? Well, we want to get rid of coffee breath. Want to have a nice clean mouth. This is just very simple example. That would be something like a craving. And then make it easy. Then you just brush your teeth. It's right there. You just do it. And the reward is you have a nice clean mouth. All right. That's super, super simple, but you can use it for everything. So for me, practicing for TEDx, I'd be like, okay, so I need to sit down and do a videotape. Okay, I'm not feeling it today. I'm all a mess and whatever. Even if I'm only looking at the videotape, I have to tell you, it's so crazy. I would put a little mat down, just like you saw with Lemon Squeezy with the Surefoot pads, but I make my own little mat for myself because I had to stand on that. The minute I'd stand on that mat, and it's just me. Just me. How crazy is that? The video wasn't even going anywhere except for me. Some went out to my review team, but sometimes it didn't have to. So, cue a nice calm. And then what's my craving is I want to do this thing. I'm committed. I'm going to make this happen and I want to be better at it. So I would just record a little piece of it, maybe just the intro or maybe somewhere partway through, and just do a 1-minute clip. And then I'm done. With that little piece. So that's the way you can make it really quick. And then finally, transcending the ego is really about giving your best in service to something bigger than you. So Wendy, when you talked about the Surefoot pads, you talked about, you didn't really have a lot of fear because the horses were telling you they needed this, they wanted this. This is amazing. And you're absolutely right. So thinking about that, what is it that's bigger than you that you can connect with? It could be you're advancing something, a relationship with your animal, that's huge. It could be that you're doing something at work that's part of a bigger vision or mission. And then just take that deep breath, exhale, dive in and deliver. And remember the most important thing. So for me with this whole TEDx thing, the most important thing was actually not the performance. It was not the performance. It was not the recording. It was the journey. And after the journey, right? This is just a point in time. This actual event was a point in time, and it was fun and everything, but that's not what's going to be the lasting piece for my role on this earth. And then just remember to enjoy it. So with that, I'll kind of open the chat to questions, thoughts, or comments. If there's anything you guys want to go back over, I know I went over a bunch of stuff. There's, this is a lifetime of work in here encapsulated in just a few little highlights. So what are your thoughts, Wendy?
Well, what's really interesting is I've been working on a presentation about habits.
Oh, good.
And using that as a, bringing that into like talking about habits for people, but also how we project those habits onto horses and whether or not horses actually hold habits. I've seen changes occur so quickly that it makes me wonder if horses have habits, but there's Purkinje cells that I learned about last night, which was really fascinating in the cerebellum, and like with a horse with shivers, that's learned behavior to back up. We ask him to back up versus an innate behavior. And so anyway, it all fits really, really well into last night's webinar on shivers in terms of it being controlled by the cerebellum and these Purkinje cells and habits and what's happening. And of course, I wound up, going down the rabbit hole today on the internet looking up Purkinje cells related to habits. So I don't know that it all fits.
Well, and I love that, and for me, one of the kind of interesting for me. So I have a master's in biology and I was a scientist for 20 years. So, data research is in my blood. I love it. I love going down the rabbit hole. And that's why I'm always committed to reading, researching, figuring out some new things. I'm trying to put it back out in terms that people can actually use and apply, which is why I love what you're doing. And really the mat work, being able to bring the chair or the mat into some of these business coaching clients in a context that they don't know Feldenkrais. They're not going to go do Feldenkrais, but they're going to sit on the chair and they're going to feel their connection to that support or not. And it's fascinating. And for people that want to go deeper into that, then we can think about the neuroscience that's involved in that. There's just so much. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research that's going to come out about habits and learning and what makes excellence and that sort of thing. And, I think we're right at the precipice of a huge shift in how we look at some of these things, certainly with atomic habits and the power of habit that, we're starting to, but you keep seeing this. The beauty of it is it gets back to simplicity, right? Cue, craving, response, reward. You don't have to understand all the neurology that's happening and the neurochemicals and that sort of thing. But in relation to horses, it's so important that we look at the habits that we take to them. And I think that's, sometimes what our limiting thing is that we don't realize that we're carrying a habit to the horse and putting him back in that situation when we really don't have to.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. We see it all the time. And as soon as you change your rider, what happens to that horse? If the rider's a better rider, more balanced or something, the horse has a whole new suite of possibilities.
Right. So whether that's, the horse is the mirror of that example, or whether that's other things in our lives, it's, habits are so unconscious, and they're the things like what hold us back from doing what we want to do, the habit of fear, the habit of, not feeling good enough or whatever. And how do we first become aware of those habits and then deal with them and then make changes?
Right.
I think the thing about habits that are so interesting is that the bad habits usually have an immediate effect, whereas the good habits don't have quite. That's what I love about Surefoot, because I think for the horses it's a good habit that has an immediate effect, whereas typically like, the habit of like smoking cigarettes or whatever, it has an immediate effect, but it's not a good habit. So anyway, it's kind of fascinating.
It's so fascinating. All of it's fascinating. And being able to, be the instrument to test some of these things out. I test things out on myself. And I'm like, all right, well, how did that feel? Well, that just made me mad. Well, what am I assuming about that? And what's coming up for me in my past? Someone's having to dig in there and mine and find out. So okay, yeah, she would feel great in the saddle. So there's a couple of comments in here. Yeah, feel joyful and confident in the saddle. Well, one of the things about feeling joyful and confident in the saddle is really all around balance. I mean, Wendy, you know all about that. And when we're in fear, we're usually out of balance, right? And
Yep.
some, it could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be both. It's usually an integrated piece. That's what I found anyway. But when you can start to find that place of balance through experimentation in a safe environment, like you set up, Wendy, then you start to feel new possibilities for your body, and you start to feel new possibilities for how you may feel safe in the saddle. And I know for myself, I've had, unfortunately, a number of fairly yucky horse riding accidents as well. I didn't quite have the balance. What I've found is if you can get a support system around that, meaning a good trainer who really understands this. Not every trainer really does understand that kind of insecurity that manifests in your body, and then a really good equine partner to help you through it. So I've gone to other horses. My horses are not always the best ones to ride for that. I've gone to steady schoolmasters. In fact, that's what I rode with you, Wendy, last year on one of Kelly King's horses. He was such a little sweetheart, and I was able to just play. And you put me in some kind of short stirrup weird thing in different positions and things. Here's a horse that I never even rode before. I hadn't done anything in a long time, you know. And I'm with Wendy, and I show up. I'm like, all right, I'm yours. We'll just do this because I trust you. And I trusted that horse enough by association, because I knew no one would put a horse in there that they didn't feel could deal with this stuff. So having that right combination of partners is really important to support yourself through the process. And I've done this numerous times with different schoolmaster type horses that have not been my own, and ridden them for a little period of time just to get myself back together. And the great thing is you can.
Well, there's another really good technique with fear is to put a number on it, because when we put a number on it, it moves it into a different part of our brain.
Yeah.
And it puts it where we can tangibly address it. So, you know, what happens if you don't put a number on it, it can be it just seems to grow, you know, like a mushroom, and it just kind of takes over. So being able to put a number on it and identify it, that's so important. And then being able to find that place of balance, because the nervous system recognizes when you're in balance. The thing is, you know, having somebody who can help you find that feeling, that space. That's the thing that, you know, what I've come up with, the way I solve that is I immediately put value on it by showing them where they're secure and where they're insecure in about 2 seconds. And I'm working at very primitive nervous system level. I'm not trying to talk to you about it at all. I'm just like, boom, boom. And then you're like, whoa, okay. But you have a choice. So there is that.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been part of that. And I have my pre-flight checklist every time I get on a horse. I've got my Wendy stuff that I do to make sure my body's in that place. So thank you for that. Really great.
But you know, that fear is such a fascinating topic for me, because it's so related to it is our nervous system trying to tell us, you know, danger, danger, Will Robinson is. And if we ignore it, that's when we can get into really serious trouble. But we can't let it necessarily run our lives. We have to actually make a plan and identify, like all the things you're talking about, identify it, and then work the problem, not just let the problem become, you know, this overarching monster.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gail's got a comment. Do horses have these same fears due to past experiences?
I would actually say yes. I mean, you see that all the time. The horse is fearful about getting in the trailer or fearful about going in a corner. But do they have the same cognitive process that we do? No, I don't think so. I think they're much more present and immediate. And I think it has a lot to do, like a scary corner, with their vision and trying to be able to see what's in that corner and not being given the opportunity to work it out. And obviously some horses have a much higher threat level, you know, twitch, like thoroughbreds can fire up a lot faster than, say, you know, a horse that's like a quarter horse. So they do have fears, but I think a lot of their fears go back to balance in a more direct way, that when they feel out of balance, they are going to be fearful, because that's what we see with surefoot pads all the time. You put the pads underneath their feet, they find balance, and all the fear goes away. Not all, but a lot of it, right? That's the whole reason that I keep doing this, because I watch all the horses find groundedness and calm down.
It's the best thing you could do. I mean, you're bringing peace. You're bringing peace to the horses. And, I'm trying to do the same thing with the folks that I work with and with myself, bringing peace, because I got to walk the talk. So I got to find that peace in myself where I can find that center of balance. I can go into an interaction and just be fully present for whatever unfolds.
Yep.
People can
people can stand on the pads too. We have some really interesting stories about people standing on pads. Yep. And it has a calming effect. It's a little different than the horses. We don't have a hoof, so it's a little more subtle. But the horses are just, I still like. How long have I been doing this now? And I'm still fascinated every time I put a horse on a pad, because it works. And you're like, wow, there it is again. And it might be a little different scenario, something. It's kind of fun to get a horse that's like got a little issue or something to work through, but it's just so consistent. It's so repeatable. It's really fun.
It definitely is that, and it's so cathartic to watch also.
Yeah.
Right? So you just watch and you kind
of I know I have to be so careful at the workshops. We're finally getting the workshop schedule up, but I have to be so careful when I teach the workshops, because if we do too many horses, they're all drooling. They're all just sitting there because they get all that energy from the horse and the calming and the purse, and they're just like, okay, you guys are toast. I can't help you today. So I have to keep measuring that sympathetic parasympathetic so I can get them through.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Well, thank you. This has been really helpful for me.
It's always fun to see you, Shari. It's always great, and listen to what you've been up to, and I really appreciate you sharing your time with us tonight.
Well, thanks so much for the opportunity, and we're excited about the hay soaker, so we're going to hear more about that.
Yeah. All right, so just remember, you can find this and all the other webinars on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel, and I'm heading off to the Pony Club annual meeting in St. Louis, and then William Wood's going to spend a day at William Wood's, which will be really fun, Equine College, and then Cincinnati Hoof Summit. So I do have a webinar wedged into that the whole week. Next week with Dr. Raquel Butler, and we're going to talk about scars. So stay tuned. We'll get that. I think it's already up in the shop, so you can sign up for it now. All right. Thanks, Shari.
Thanks. Bye,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye.